Welcome to Triumph IAS. It's a daily mains practice question and answer series. This program is exclusively designed for UPSC CSE aspirants. In this video discussion, we will discuss UPSC CSE mains previous 25-year questions.
Question number 1. What do you understand by the theory of continental drift? Discuss the prominent evidences in its support. Let's start with the introduction of the answer. The continental drift theory was developed in the 1912 by Alfred Wegener. Wegener suggested that the continents were once united into a single supercontinent named Pangaea. The main body of the answer should be: the supercontinent was surrounded by mega ocean known as Panthalassa. Wegener further argued that about 225 million years ago, Pangaea broke into two large continental masses: Laurasia, the northern component, and Gondwanland, the southern component. Subsequently, Laurasia and Gondwanland continued to break into smaller continents. Evidence in support of the continental drift theory. Number 1. Jigsaw fit evidence or the matching of continents. The shorelines of South America and Africa show a remarkable fit. Africa, Madagascar, and east coast of India fit into each other. Number 2. Rocks of same age across the oceans. Ancient rocks from Brazil coast matches the mountain belt found in Western Africa. Also the Caledonian and Appalachian mountains show similarity. Number 3. The Gondwana system of sediments from India has its counterparts in 6 various landmasses of the southern hemisphere, which demonstrates that these landmasses had remarkably same antiquities. Number 4. The rich placer deposits of gold in Ghana is devoid of source rock in the area. It suggests that the gold deposits of Ghana are derived from the Brazil Plateau. Number 5. Fossil evidence. Lemurs occur in Africa, Madagascar, and India, suggesting that a contiguous landmass Lemuria existed connecting the 3 landmasses. The conclusion of the answer is: although the continental drift theory has become obsolete, it paved the way for modern theories, including the theory of plate tectonics and seafloor spreading. Question number 2. The aim of Information Technology Agreements (ITAs) is to lower all taxes and tariffs on information technology products by signatories to zero. What impact should such agreements have on India's interests? Let's start with the introduction of the answer. The Information Technology Agreement (ITA) is a multilateral agreement enforced by the World Trade Organization (WTO) that came into force in 1997. Moving on to the main body of the answer. Number 1. It covers a major chunk of global trade in IT-related products. The main aim of the Information Technology Agreement (ITA) is to lower all taxes and tariff on information technology products by signatories to zero. Number 2. The ITA guarantees duty-free trade in hundreds of products. In the context of the multilateral agreements like ITA, India's main concern was to attract inward FDI and to facilitate the growth of its then still nascent IT services industry. Number 3. For electronics manufacturing, however, gains from trade liberalization were overshadowed by substantial costs, with rising electronics imports inflating the country's current account deficit to unsustainable record highs, while eroding domestic electronic manufacturing and innovation. Number 4. Experts suggest that in order to improve reciprocity in the distribution of gains from ITA, the latecomers nations like India deserves special and differentiated treatment. Number 5. In turn, these countries need to agree to reforms that reduce investment barriers in their domestic industries, such as restrictive regulations and discrimination against. Number 6. Foreign direct investment. India substantially believes that the ITA will only be beneficial to the country when domestic manufacturing is robust and huge, and in the long run the agreement will open the huge global market for domestic units. Number 7. The Indian government will also have to intensify its efforts to promote local manufacturing of electronics to counter the possible fallout from the US-China Trade Pact that removes import tariffs on a host of new electronic items. The conclusion of the answer is: considering the imperatives, India must further develop and streamline its IT industries to make its products and services more competitive in the global market. Question number 3. The persisting drives of the government for development of large industries in backward areas have resulted in isolating the tribal population and the farmers who face multiple displacements with Malkangiri and Naxalbari foci. Discuss the corrective strategies needed to win the left-wing extremism (LWE) doctrine affected citizens back into the mainstream of social and economic growth. Let's start with the introduction of the answer. Development-induced displacement of human settlement has been an important issue engendering Maoist conflict. Large-scale displacements caused by mega-development projects have intensified the confrontation between the displaced and the state. The main body of the answer is Malkangiri's TR1BLS. About 58% of the district's population are among its most poor and marginalized. Thousands of them were uprooted from their native land by hydroelectric projects. The fears of these TR1BLS seem to be further aggravated in Tarlakota, another pocket of Malkangiri, where thousands of tribal families were settled following the Machkund project since 1964. But unfortunately, they do not have patas or rights over the land they till. Their anger had turned them against the state. Thus, in 1967, when the Naxalbari revolution began, there was support for it in Malkangiri. But the villagers never got any land, and over the last 40 years, the Naxal saviors have become fearful oppressors. Their violence has kept development out and fueled greater poverty. Over the last 2 decades, there has been a massive push to this development agenda, which has coincided with economic liberalization and the entry of private corporations into tribal areas. This has been met with considerable resistance by tribal communities. Tribal protests are being met with violence by the state's paramilitary forces and the private security staff of corporations involved. These dismal situations have paved the way for left-wing extremism (LWE) in tribal areas. Tribal communities face disregard for their values and culture, breach of protective legislations, serious material and social deprivation, and aggressive resource alienation. Corrective strategies. Number 1. It is widely acknowledged that a large section of the Indian population, especially the tribal communities, have not received the full benefits of development processes undertaken over the past 6 decades. Indeed, it is recognized that the tribal population has been adversely affected by the developmental projects undertaken during this period. Hence, the solution to these issues should enable the TR1BLs to protect their own interests. Number 2. Due share in socio-economic progress for tribal people and their habitations, including facilities like health, education, livelihood, drinking water, sanitation, roads, electricity and sustainable income, in situ. Number 3. Protecting the land and forest rights of tribal communities is equivalent to protecting their livelihoods, life and liberty. This remains one of the critical necessities of a welfare state. Therefore, laws protecting tribal land from alienation must be upheld at all costs. Number 4. The right to natural resources in tribal lands has to be protected. They should only be accessed with the consent of the Gram Sabhas of the villages, both directly affected and in the zone of influence. Number 5. While tribal lands hold much of the natural and mineral wealth of the nation, these resources cannot be alienated against their will. Moreover, communities who part with their lands have the right to share in the wealth and income so generated from its resources. Hence, a reasonable share of the wealth generated by the resources in their homelands must accrue to them by law. The conclusion of the answer is: India is the largest democracy in the world. However, left-wing extremism desires to weaken and make the roots of democracy hollow. The development of New India is envisaging is based on development and strength of democracy.